What is up, squad? Today is the day that we interview Saj, the CEO and founder of Sparkster. Now, this is an exciting time for us, and there's been several viewers that actually have formulated questions that we can pitch to Saj during this interview. Now, before we start things off, I do want to give a shout out to Sparkster Quinn, Nero Paulin, and Mr. Chatty. They actually helped me orchestrate this interview and bring everything together. So thank you guys so much. And of course, thank you, Saj, for taking the time out of your busy schedule to come here today and do this interview with me. So without further ado, let's dive in. So nice to have you on the channel here, Saj. It is awesome that you're able to come through and do this AMA with me. I've noticed that you've been very active in the community in Telegram, and not only Telegram, but even doing AMAs with the community, which is awesome. So I love the fact that you know, you're putting yourself out there and you're saying any questions that we have, I'll take them and I'll answer them for you and we'll be good to go. I love that. So
absolutely. I mean, I think it's really important from a transparency perspective, and from the perspective that you know, the community are the people that have contributed to our project, and they have a right to hear from us, and they have a right to expect regular updates and to be able to access the team. So, you know, that's really at the core of our perspective on things, as I'm sure we're going to get into through the course of our call today.
Yeah, absolutely. So for the viewers, can you briefly explain the Sparkster platform and its initiatives?
Yeah, absolutely. So we began building Sparkster, you know, 4 years ago in 2014. And the Sparkster's mission is really a mission of empowerment. It's all about how do we help people express their ideas, bring their ideas to reality, and express their creativity. And so, you know, one of the things that we saw early on in challenges that we were experiencing ourselves, right, is that people often have this limitation or this boundary of not being able to code, but they're accountants, they're people that work in various different parts of the company, and so what we wanted to do was to give them the tools of, you know, expression in today's world. Everything in today's world is software, whether it's your microwave or your refrigerator or it's the software you use at work. You know, it's all software based. We go to work, we use software, there's things that we do in software. So it's incredibly important that moving forward, everybody has the ability to manifest their ideas through software. And in 2015 or 16 or so, we began, you know, looking at the blockchain movement. It was a big thing that was going on, and you know, when we first began by just looking at some white papers, and what we realized was the incredible power that this technology has to, you know, to liberate people. And one way that we saw in using this technology is to create a decentralized cloud. So we were building a platform that allows people to build software, right? But it became apparent that the future of software and the way it's going to be run is decentralized. And so what is Sparkster? Sparkster is a way to be able to build software without writing code, right, in an easy, accessible way, and then to be able to run that software in a community infrastructure where the community members benefit, but most importantly at a cost point that's significantly lower, 10% of the price of traditional cloud computing. And I'm sure we're going to talk about how that might be the case. So yeah, that's kind of an intro to what Sparkster is and why we're doing what we're doing. At the heart of it is empowerment.
Yeah. Oh, jeez. A tenth of the cost. Holy crap. That's amazing. So the next thing I wanted to jump into is ICO strategy. So what is Sparkster's strategy for managing an ICO in the current market conditions?
So what's really important to us here, and kind of our ethos and approach to things, is to be really as community driven as we possibly can be, right? So one of the core principles with which we operate is transparency. You know, as I mentioned earlier, these guys have, you know, the community has purchased a significant value of tokens, right? We don't take that responsibility lightly. So I think that they have a right to transparency, and I think projects that come in the future should abide by that sort of mentality of, you know, there's a sense of accountability to these people. But also, it's not just about transparency, it's also about the way that you're structured. In our case, we chose to be very, very community oriented. We didn't want to create a VC driven pyramid scheme where, you know, one group of people are dumping on another group of people who are dumping on another group of people. So from the very beginning, you know, we eliminated bonuses. I think we were if I'm not mistaken, we're the first project to have no bonuses for anybody at any level, right? And then we introduced, you know, we knew that there was going to be a time difference between when we ran the pre-sale and when we ran the crowd sale, right? And so we said that the price of the token should be set in US dollars at 15 cents, so that everybody gets in at the same level, right? And the third sort of perspective that we had was that, you know, we don't want the tokens being controlled by a small group of people, right? So nobody in Sparkster Sale, for example, owns more than 0.15%. 0.15% of the tokens. So that's kind of been our perspective. And for you to run a token sale well, I think you need a really strong admin team. And we're extremely fortunate that we have members of our community acting as admins in our group, and you know, really supporting the team, supporting the community tremendously well. It's made life easier for us.
Yeah, absolutely. And I can definitely speak to that, because there are so many projects out there which do exactly what you were talking about before. You know, they dump the coins, a developer leaves, or anything like that, and then all of a sudden the people that purchase the tokens are left sitting there and with no value for their tokens, right? And it's extremely unfortunate. So yeah, I mean, I've been very happy that you guys have shown that you're very active in the community, and you've been really forward in that regard. So it's good. I like it. It's very promising.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So just one other point I want to make, right? You know, we've also tried to be transparent in from the perspective of letting people see under the hood of what we're doing and what we've built and such. And I think that that's also really important in running an ICO in this day and age, right? So we had, you know, Sparkster.me/try allowed people to experience the Sparkster's no-code platform, right? And then we also, after the pre-sale, put out a video that demonstrated the TPS claims that we've made in our white paper. So it's not just about, I think it's important to not just talk, but also be able to walk the talk and demonstrate that. And we did that publicly. We did it live, and we were the first project to ever do a TPS test live. So I'd like to think that we're raising the bar in the space.
Mm-hmm. So in regards to partnerships, I've heard that you, as in Sparkster, have a partnership with ARM. Could you tell us a little bit about that? Yeah,
absolutely. So let me give, you know, the community some insight into who is ARM, because there are probably people who don't know. So ARM is a company that designs microprocessors and microcontrollers, right? So 99% of mobile devices, whether it's an iPad or an iPhone or a Samsung or an Android, right? They're running ARM-based processors. So those are processors that are designed by ARM, and ARM obviously earns royalties for the use of their patents. But ARM doesn't manufacture them, much like Apple doesn't manufacture iPhones. Companies like Qualcomm or somebody else would be the ones that manufacture the processor. So that's who ARM is. They are also present in places that you may not know. So you probably have many ARM microcontrollers inside of your car. For example, moving the seat back and forth, turning on your air conditioning unit, your air conditioning system inside of your car, or moving the windows up and down, or the side mirrors in and out. So those sorts of things that are controlled by ARM microcontrollers. And so ARM has over 100 billion devices in the world today. 100 billion microcontrollers and microprocessors in the world today. So it's a big deal. We were speaking at ARM's TechCon last week, and one of the things that we learned there was that 70% of the human population have an ARM device, you know, which is incredible, absolutely incredible. So yes, we have a partnership with ARM, and what we enable people to do, you know, inside of ARM's ecosystem is to be able to build those IoT devices without writing any code. This week on Monday, we put out the demo that we showed at ARM TechCon, and it's currently on our Twitter channel, pinned to the top. So what this video kind of demonstrates is not only can you build the devices without writing code, but those devices can be orchestrated over the blockchain using Sparkster's decentralized cloud, and how and why that makes sense. So, you know, we go into this in the video, but essentially ARM talked about their vision for the fifth wave of computing and how the world will consist of 1 trillion devices. And we wanted to kind of get our opinions out there about how we may be able to contribute to the development of those 1 trillion devices, and why we think the blockchain is absolutely critical to the realization of that future. So if you're interested in that, I recommend checking that video out.
Yeah, absolutely. I actually did watch it prior to this, but for the viewers, that explanation is fantastic. And the viewers, absolutely, they should definitely check that out if they're interested. I mean, because that conference was awesome. The presentation that you did was great. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. So is it correct that Sparkster is built off of the Stellar blockchain? And if so, why Stellar?
Yeah, so when we, you know, I would say in the earlier phase of this project, we were built on top of Stellar. So what we thought was, there's core things that we're doing, which is extending what other people have already done. We don't need to go and reinvent the wheel at this point in time. Let's focus on building the pieces where we actually contribute value, right? So, you know, the Sparkster decentralized cloud, it consists of compute nodes and storage nodes and verification nodes and things like that. So what we did was we focused our efforts on building the components of our decentralized cloud that makes that is where the real value is. But now we've removed Stellar from the platform, simply because we think that we can exceed 1,000 transactions a second, and we don't need maybe some of that heavier infrastructure that Stellar has. So hopefully that's a good explanation of that.
Yeah, absolutely. And Sparkster was initially using a Stellar token and then switched to an ERC20 on the Ethereum blockchain. What was the reason for that switch? Is it?
Yeah, so we were advised that the ERC20 token would be a lot better for our token holders, in the sense that it's easier to participate, it's easy, you know, people hold Ethereum and such. And so we were advised, you know, in terms of running the sale successfully, it would be best to do that on Ethereum, and we took that advice. But essentially, you know, the token does the job of what the token is supposed to do, meaning it doesn't matter where the token is run, so long as it's used in the network to provide the specific utilities that the token is intended to provide, it can be run anywhere. So it didn't matter from a technology perspective, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. So what about the consensus mechanism for Sparkster? Is it proof of work, proof of stake? How does that work?
So there are 4 types of nodes in Sparkster's decentralized cloud. So you've got compute nodes, which is you've got compute nodes and storage nodes, and they're the workhorse of the network. Essentially, storage nodes is where the data is stored, and compute nodes is the logic that executes or acts upon that data. You've got verification nodes, which do, as you might imagine, verify transactions. And then you've got the master nodes, which are the puppeteers of the network. They're essentially orchestrating the process across the network, right? So master nodes, compute nodes, and storage nodes, they're all proof of stake. and the verification nodes, they're proof of useful work. And what that means, the useful work is important. So this doesn't mean that you need a GPU to run a verification node. But what it means is that you're doing the work of verifying transactions. And when you can prove that you've verified transactions, you get paid for verifying those transactions. So you're performing work and you're essentially being paid for those. Performing useful work, if you will.
Okay, all right, I got you. So that kind of opens up another question here, if you don't mind. So for verification nodes, you were saying there's an incentive. Now, who is paid that incentive, and how do you become one of those verification nodes, or how do you run one of those?
That's a really good question. So let me get into the philosophy of why people might use the decentralized cloud, and how, I made the claim that we'd end up being 1/10 the price of centralized cloud computing, right? So how does that come about? And that will kind of lead into your question about the nodes, right? So essentially, if you think about traditional cloud computing as we know it today, that the cloud computing that's run by the likes of Amazon or Microsoft or Google, they have a lot of big industrial heavy equipment in those data centers. So for example, they have massive diesel generators. They have enormous air conditioning units that are pumping cold air into those racks, keeping those servers cool. They have massive battery backup systems. Well, imagine that we have a cloud that consists of the community's devices. Now, these are devices that you have, like your mobile phone or your desktop computer at home. Well, when you're at work, your desktop computer is probably not doing very much, right? When you're sleeping, your mobile phone isn't doing very much. And so if you could contribute that unused capacity or that spare capacity to form a network, to form a cloud, then, if you think about it, well, we don't have any of those massive costs that companies like Amazon and Microsoft are paying, right? And because of that, if we can eliminate those costs, we can drastically reduce the cost of cloud computing, right? So now, if you think about a company like a company that may be using centralized cloud computing, let's take an example of, say, Panasonic. So if Panasonic are probably paying millions of dollars to Amazon to run software in Amazon's cloud, right? If we presented to the likes of Panasonic, hey, it would cost you, significantly less, 1/10 the price, to run your software in a decentralized environment. That's a switch they're likely to make. It's a disruptive price point. It's a disruptive cost strategy, right? And in doing so, the reward to people running verification nodes or compute nodes or storage nodes comes from that 10% that would be rewarded back to the people who are contributing their devices.
Okay, I understand. Okay, yeah, no, that's amazing, because that opens up a whole new opportunity for people to basically generate an income, and a passive income at that. Right?
Absolutely.
Residual
Absolutely.
income is what we need. As Warren Buffett actually said, if you're not making money while you're sleeping, then you're gonna die working, right? So,
but so just think about how empowering such a passive income could be, right? Cloud computing is needed all over the world, and given our mission of empowering people, we think that this idea of decentralized cloud computing, puts an income stream into people's lives that they may not have had before, may put kids through school and could drastically change the course of someone's life. And so, this is kind of at a core to our mission and vision for the world in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I think it's great. So which brings us to our next question here. Now, for the viewers, what exactly is a cell in depth?
Okay, so as I mentioned, there's two types of nodes on our network. There's compute nodes and there's storage nodes. Yeah. Now, storage nodes, if you think about some of the challenges that many blockchains have, right? They have TPS limitations in trying to get transactions committed to the blockchain. And what that really means is that there's a throughput limitation on the blockchain. So what a cell is we take these storage nodes and we form a blockchain, and a blockchain is one cell. So you can think of cells, as being multiple blockchains. Now, what's key to the way and the approach that we're looking at this is that these, in Sparkster's case, we're following something that's known as a shared nothing architecture. So one cell has nothing shared with another cell, meaning one blockchain has nothing shared with another blockchain. That's distinct from, for example, sharding, where in sharding there's always a base layer that the different shards communicate through. And basically what the benefits of that is that as we add cells to the network, we're able to achieve a linear increase in TPS, meaning, if one cell produces 1,000 transactions a second, two cells actually produces 2,000 transactions a second, not 1,800 transactions a second, right? And so I'll give you an example that would make that explains why this is possible for us, but maybe not possible for other networks. So remember, we're solving a very specific problem, which is how do you run software in a decentralized environment, right? So it turns out that in software, there are natural isolation boundaries. So let me explain what that means. Let's say that you and I both take Uber, right? Does my Uber trip or my Uber history ever need to synchronize or know about your Uber trip or your Uber history?
No, the only time that it would ever have to is if we were going to a meeting at the same time. But I mean, otherwise, never.
Exactly,
never.
Exactly, right? So, you're in Canada or I'm in England. We're in two completely different Ubers. There's never a reason for your Uber history and my Uber history to ever synchronize. And if they're not synchronizing, they never need to be in the same DHT, or the same distributed hash table. And what that means is that we can put them into two separate cells. So if your cell is processing transactions at 1,000 transactions a second, and my cell is processing 1,000 transactions a second, we now have Uber's application on two cells has 2,000 transactions a second. So that's kind of the core benefit of our architecture and why it applies so well to our specific problem case, which is cloud computing.
Great. So now, does the Sparkster platform integrate with esports and gaming? And the reason why I bring this question up is because I've made videos about blockchain gaming and esports and all of that, and the total integration of that. And a project out there called DixieCoin is actually doing a lot of that, and they could benefit from the use of this platform. Write code using the Sparkster platform and then integrate it into theirs, right? So,
absolutely.
So yeah, so how does Sparkster integrate with e-gaming?
That's a really good question. So I think if you think about you want to play a multiplayer game, right? A lot of that graphics processing is occurring locally on your machine, but you require a network to interconnect all the people that are part of that multiplayer game. So think about the sorts of information that needs to be communicated back and forth between all the people that are on the same map, right? You need to know what's their position, are they alive, have they been killed, who's attacking who's firing on who, what's that person's health status, and all that information, right? So that we can all arrive at what's called a collective or global state of what's going on in that. So what I think is really useful in the e-gaming space, right, is that because the Sparkster decentralized cloud has such high TPS, millions and millions of transactions a second, we're able to play a game across Sparkster's decentralized network that would be that would allow, say, thousands or maybe millions of people to be playing the same game, the same map at the same time. And that, I think, is remarkable. So that's kind of how I see we will be able to contribute in a big way to the e-gaming space.
Yeah, no, that would be amazing. So to just break it down. So if I had my computer here and I was playing a game and you were doing the same thing over there, we could use the Sparkster network to transfer that information. Yeah, no, that definitely makes sense. I see exactly what you're talking about. And then on top of that, the processing cost would be a tenth versus
Exactly.
what traditional companies are doing right now to process
Exactly.
that information. Yeah, no,
Exactly.
that's great.
So what's, it may not be apparent to the people that are, people who are not so well versed in technology, but
Yeah,
essentially what's happening is that there's just information that's passing between different machines, and then that information between the different computers is being translated into this person is in this position on this map, and it's shown graphically, right? But that communication traversing between all the different people that are part of the same multiplayer map is a big decentralized computing problem, and I think that we present a wonderful solution to it.
yeah, yeah, definitely. So the next question is, how would a phone such as mine join the Sparkster decentralized cloud?
So, what going back to our community ethos, right? We want to be able to make sure that everybody and as many people as possible can participate in the network and participate in what we're trying to bring about. And so what's important to us is that it's very easy. It should be as simple, for example, on your phone, it should be as simple as installing an app. On your computer, it should be as simple as, running an executable and installing some software. In future releases, we'll also enable you, for example, to schedule when your phone will be available to the network. So, for example, it's only available when you're sleeping, or the amount of processor capacity, or the amount of your processor that you want to contribute to the network. So, future releases we'll have more control, if you will. But it should be really, really simple to participate. And even from the perspective of a VM, we'll have a template available that you can just spin up if you want to run that as a VM.
Nice, that's amazing. Yeah, I mean, like allowing the average Joe able to install this software, run it, and just roll with it is amazing. Having that integration, you're reaching a very large crowd, right? And I think that's definitely gonna produce a lot of success in the long term. So,
Absolutely.
So is there a proof of concept for 10 million transactions per second? I notice on the website there, I do see a proof of concept for 52,000 with 50 cells, which would mean that you would need approximately 10,000 cells to do 10 million transactions, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So what we demonstrated in that video, we conducted that TPS test live at the beginning of June. I believe, and as I mentioned, we were the first to conduct a live TPS test of any project. But what that video really demonstrates is the proof of the concept that as we add cells, the TPS scales linearly, right? So we start from a very low number of transactions, 0 or a couple of hundred or something, and then it scales up as we keep, as we add more cells. You can see that, that TPS is rising, going up to 52,000 transactions a second. Yeah. So what we're really showing is that, the idea of being able to scale linearly, which is at the core and at the heart of what we're promising here, right? A network that can scale linearly. So that's what that video really demonstrates. And so, it costs us maybe $10,000 to produce that video because of the cost in computing that was required to run. Like I said, a cell is a blockchain, right? So every one of those cells is a blockchain. We're running 50 blockchains at that point in time.
Yeah.
In that demo. So what's also interesting is that the idea of 10 million transactions a second is based off of at that point in time, on what we practically expected in terms of how many people might contribute devices and how many people might participate in the network and so forth. But if you think about it, there's no theoretical limit to what Sparkster TPS really is. And what's interesting about that is that at the ARM TechCon that we were at last week, the CEO presented a vision for 1 trillion devices coming online in the next 10 years. Now, if the world does indeed have 1 trillion devices, I can't imagine what Sparkster's TPS might be, it would be significantly higher than 10 million transactions a second. And so this is one of the reasons why I think we really present a powerful case for what the future of decentralized computing, what that architecture is going to be.
Yeah. Oh, jeez. That's like that. You guys are gonna like. According to those details and those statistics, you guys are going to crush it, right? That's what it sounds like. You guys are doing the tests. There's a proof of concept for 52,000, and as that increase, I mean, it's going to be interesting to see where the project goes and how it develops, right? So there's a lot of people excited about it, including some of my viewers, definitely. So, now, the next thing I wanted to ask is, what is the market you're trying to sell to? Now, I know for a YouTuber, right, there's a certain market that you create your content for, and say from 19 to the age of 25, my content is suited for these individuals in this age group. So what's that market for Sparkster?
So, I think that we can first start looking at that from the perspective of, there's really two groups here. There's the people who are innovating, the people who are manifesting their ideas. And those are likely to be younger people who are adopting technology at a high rate, and who are in the workplace or coming to the workplace, and they're fresh with ideas, and they look at, they've got to have the mentality of looking at a problem and saying, the way we're doing things can be done better, can be done easier. Right. So, for example, there are people like this today. There's the maker community that are building devices with Arduinos. There's people who are building or creating patchwork solutions using Excel spreadsheets and such. Right. So they're a core target market for who we think are going to be these innovators of the future that radically transform our society and transform our society from being primarily consumer driven to being where everybody has the capacity and the capabilities of being a producer, a creator, right? But then the other side of this market is, for example, the corporations themselves. We believe that, and we've got research to support this, that the corporations that adopt this sort of mentality, what we're calling the innovative enterprises, they're the people that put the tool in use in their company. They're the sorts of people that tell their employees, hey, we want you to look at the way we're doing things and find innovations and find efficiencies, right? They're the sorts of companies that will be driving lower costs, increasing employee morale, because you're no longer coming to a company and just pushing paper. You're able to bring your mind to work and bring your creativity to work, right? Those are the companies that I think will be around in the long run, and we have evidence to suggest that there's a strong interest in companies adopting this sort of technology, right? And they see the benefit of that. So we've recently hired a PR firm called Marlin PR. They represent Slack, and they represent Slack and Sony, and a few other companies that you'll see on their website. So they're helping us to kind of get this message out to those different groups of people, and obviously it has to be tailored to them. So tailored to the executive in the enterprise, tailored to the people that are in the maker community, tailored to young folk who can see themselves stepping into this idea of that they are a creator and that people are interested in their thoughts and their ideas. And that's really important, especially as we evolve into a world that's much more robotic or driven by artificial intelligence. Our creativity and our ability to contribute ideas is going to be pivotal. We have a mantra here at Sparkster, and that is that ideas are the currency of the future, not our effort. And I think this is really in line with that. That's amazing, and
it definitely makes sense. Like, I work in a field where I do information security, right? So instead of doing the hard labor, I use my mind, right? That is where I generate my profit, because in the long run, that is the way to go, because your body breaks down quick, right? And doing all of that physical work is, you know, it wears you down. And again, that just brings it back to residual income, right? And committing resources to the decentralized cloud, right? So, yeah. So, what percentage of revenue does a finished and developed product offer the Sparkster platform or developer community? How does that work?
Yeah, so I think that's a really interesting question, and it strikes at the heart of how Sparkster will be delivering this network that's 1/10 the price of traditional cloud computing, right? So how we make that a reality is that you get to decide how much to charge for the use of your device. When you and not only that, when you build something, let's say you build some software for the automotive industry, you get to decide how much to charge for the use of what you've built in Sparkster's in Sparkster's platform. So at the end of the day, you know, you're in charge of this. And why I say that this is at the heart of how we deliver a network that's so cost competitive or disruptively cost competitive is that as more people join the network, right, then they're competing with each other for, you know, more transactions. You know, the lower the price you charge, the more people. In the same way, Panasonic also gets to decide how much they want to pay. And so the more people that join the network, the price will move downwards. And in doing so, it will create an even greater incentive for more people to adopt the network. So what we're really saying is, right, if the world is going to adopt this technology, it has to make sense at a dollars and cents level. And that's why it's really important that the price setting and the power of price setting is in people's hands, and that it really should be an open market where we're not involved, but the people who are members and contributors to the network are making those decisions for themselves and creating their own market.
Yeah, absolutely. It totally makes sense. Putting power into the hands of the individual that are committing their own hardware to the situation, and they get to basically determine what the cost is, you know,
yeah,
of their usage. Yeah.
If you think about the marginal cost in that situation, right? Like, what does it cost for Amazon to run a server? Well, it's not just as simple as running a server, because they also have to pay for all that infrastructure we spoke about. Yeah. But for example, what does it cost to run some software? What does it cost the device owner to run some software on a mobile phone? You know, pennies, right? Because they're only paying for their internet access and they're paying for charging their phone at night. Yeah. And so, you know, they have the ability to be really competitive in terms of the price that they charge.
Yeah.
So it's really a win-win for everybody.
Yeah. So, how expensive would it be to build a dApp on the Sparkster network or decentralized network, and could an average person afford it?
Oh, absolutely. So, you know, again, back to that idea of empowerment, the use of our no-code tool is free of charge to individuals. You know, if people want to build a solution, you know, there's a lot of people that for example, like yourself, you know, you're here on YouTube and you're creating content. So there's a lot of people that are, you know, spend their personal time creating things. In that capacity, the use of the network is free of charge. The use of the platform is free of charge. Now, even in a company, it's free of charge too if they're building some software in a proof of concept capacity or something along those lines. They want to, you know, see, can their employees really use this tool to innovate? It's free of charge for them to try that out. But once, you know, more people are using it and there's a greater number of transactions, the company would then pay us for the use of our tool. But the fees from the use of the network go to the device contributors. And again, they're in charge of deciding how much to charge for that.
Right. Okay. So that definitely gives me a little bit of insight as to like where Sparkster is generating the profit to keep things, you know, moving forward constantly, right? So that's awesome.
Absolutely.
Yeah, thanks for that explanation. Now, what is the projected date to have Sparkster listed on an exchange? I was browsing through the Telegram chat there, and I noticed some people mention OKEx as the exchange that was to be listed on.
Yeah, so I think that what they're referring to is that there was a community vote
Okay.
that the community participated in for an OKEx listing. But we have not said at any point in time that we're going to be listed on OKEx or any particular date. But I think that this digs at something more material, right? Like why have we not set a date on the listing? So one, we want to be absolutely honest and transparent with our community, and we want to make sure that the expectations are real and legitimate. So what that really means is that in today's current condition, in today's market, what we're seeing is that tokens that are listing, they're falling significantly in value, some to the extent of losing 80 or 90% of the value of those tokens, right? And
Yeah.
it's a very difficult situation. It's a dire situation, in fact. What we don't want is we don't want that the people who believe in our project, the people who've participated and continue to spend so much time contributing to our community and participating in our Telegram group, and the people that really love what we're doing here at Sparkster, we don't want them to be hurt because we make an irrational decision, or we make a commitment that, without sufficient foresight or thought about we're going to list here on this date or whatever. We don't want our community to be hurt. And so we're watching the market conditions, and we want to make sure that we list at a time when tokens that do list retain their value, when there's confidence that returns back to the market. So we're kind of watching how things play out, and when the market does retain the value of the token of tokens that are listing, that's when it'll be the time for us to list.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And that definitely makes sense. I understand that position. There are so many tokens out there, like you said, that literally just fall off the market, right? Because they can't withstand the pressure of this bear market, right? So I totally understand. And on top of that, you guys are keeping the community engaged, and the community hasn't dwindled. It has actually increased in members over the period of this bear market, right? So which is great. That shows a lot of promise in the project in that regard, and I like to see that as an investor, of course.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So the next thing that I wanted to jump in, and this will be our last topic for the day, is legal. So what legal precautions is Sparkster taking with its clients? So in that regard, if somebody were to generate a piece of malicious software for that instance, what would happen? Would it be pushed out to the network? Is it reviewed prior to? How does that function?
Sure. So when you build something on the decentralized cloud, right, and you want to publish that, when you build something in our platform, in our no-code platform, and you want to publish that, for example, to the marketplace, it goes through an internal review process, much like, for example, if you want to publish something to Apple's own app store, it goes through their own review process. So from that perspective, our developers are looking at it to make sure there's nothing malicious. But we don't govern we don't control the network. We're not pulling the strings on how the decentralized cloud operates, because it's fully governed, controlled, maintained, run by the community. The
Right.
community are running the masternodes, not us. But that being said, what we are talking about is we're talking about launching the Sparkster Foundation to in the middle of next year or towards the end of next year. And one of the things that the Sparkster Foundation is going to take up is this idea of how do we delist something that's running on the network. It should be a community decision where the community arrives at consensus on something being, not being right about something that's running on the network, and being able to, downvote it or something, and that causes something to be automatically delisted. So you can imagine that something that's running on the network has a reputation score or a reputation index, and at some point, things that when people are saying, this is malicious, and they downvote it should be put into review, where then it gets reviewed by people who are within that particular subcommittee of the foundation.
Yeah, so I really like that, and basically what you're talking about is concepts that have been implemented on the Ethereum network, and then also on Ethereum Classic, right, where you have the foundation basically reviewing the code before it gets implemented, very similar to smart contracts, right? And then you have the community voting on delisting certain things that are potentially malicious to the network. So I like that a lot, and I think that's going to work out really well, because in those projects where it's already implemented, it is working, right?
Yeah.
So that's awesome. I think that's great. That's pretty much it for all my questions here today. You did a fantastic job in answering them all. If we have any other questions, we'll toss them in the comment section in the video below. But yeah,
absolutely. It's been a true pleasure, and I really appreciate the opportunity to be on here, and I appreciate your viewers spending the time and listening to what we have to say. So thank you so much, and thank you for the opportunity.
Yeah, thank you, Saj. Now, if you could, we're just gonna fist bump out. All right?
Absolutely.
All right. Take care, Saj.
Take care, guys. Thank you.